Hello, my name is Kahler, and in my role as an artist, as an educator, I have to do a lot of work with people to help them understand how to make their own work. I make a body of work that is kind of been going on for about 15 years now. There's a specific kind of ideas that I'm dealing with. I play around with like natural objects, I play around with landscape, I play around with biology, architecture, all these different things. What I'm doing is asking the viewer to participate actively in the process of looking at my works. If it refers to things, say, architectural, biological, all these different forms, these things are all in the work, but I'm not trying to do one singular kind of idea. It's not just about this. It should feel like it has the macro, the micro, all these things are in it. This central kind of axis idea came to me as I was processing through these paintings. There's no way for me to explain it any other way. These are process paintings, and there's no other way to kind of think about it for the viewer. These are works that are engaged with multiple layers, sometimes 30, 40 layers. I go in a process of addition and subtraction, but I really want to refer to that micro, macro kind of elements going on within the painting. This is Axis A1. This is the first of the painting series that kind of came out. This is actually the third piece that came out of this series, but I work on all my work simultaneously. It's not something that I do individually. I don't finish one painting, move on to the next. I actually simultaneously work on all these paintings. Most of the works in the exhibition are like 100% acrylic paintings that is done with a process of many different layers. What you're seeing in this piece, which I thought was very interesting, was my sense of light was very kind of intense in this work. One of the things that you'll see as a hallmark of this exhibition is saturated colors, something that I really love to do. And so what you're seeing in here is like a lot of this kind of structure. A new element that kind of came in was this kind of dividing area that really sets up to separate the painting. That's actually something, and I think that axis idea came from me contemplating this work that was done in 2010, 2011, which really has that central kind of axis line that separates the two canvases. And that was something that I think really kind of entered into my mind in terms of thinking about the work and where I could go with this body of work. This is the second Axis A2 that I finished pretty much simultaneously as finishing Axis A1. And I thought the real strength of this piece was the idea of creating a really strong sense of space, but also at the same time with all these linear elements. And I like this idea that these line works kind of refer to almost suspension architecture that I see in a lot of contemporary kind of architectural buildings that I'm fascinated with. My father is a retired architect and somebody that I admired quite a bit. And that was something that I think that has kind of been in the back of my head for most of my life. But the grid made a kind of an announced presence in some of the new works. But it's more subdued. It's more in like bottom layers, and I kind of built up on top of it. And I think that use of the grid is something that kind of is a new thing that has always been present in the work, but it really started to make more of a presence in this new body of work. This idea of playing around with architecture in the work and almost the idea of drafting was actually a new concept for this show, and I've never done that before in my work. Oddly enough, I've been pretty much a purist in the sense that I don't want any other media besides paint entering into my canvases or my panels. And for this show, I actually kind of dug back into some of my old experiences as a child. I used to help my father at his office and do a little drafting, do different things. And I remember thinking how much I love that process, but it's something that I've kind of never wanted to bring into the paintings. It just hasn't really come together for me in terms of what I'm thinking about. I had my father's old T-square left over from his college days, and one of the things that I was interested in was just that process of taking this old, rickety old kind of T-square, bringing it to the panel and playing around with this. And what it started to do for me is at first it was a very uncomfortable fit, but after a day or two I started to realize that the structure that was going to be kind of coming out in these paintings, that fine line in contrast to a lot of the other things, it just created a dialogue that I never anticipated what it could do. And I was very, very pleased with the results. So ideas started developing, kind of continuing some of the ideas I was doing, but these panels and this idea of using the line work and the drawing in with the paintings started to really kind of obsess me. So one of the things I think is interesting is that the grid I kind of played with it in the sense that it was flexing, it was moving, it was denying you kind of the readability of what's happening. There's lines that suggest certain perspectives and depth to defeat the kind of illusion of the space. So I like that dialogue that these two things are having, and that contrast in the dialogue is so interesting. As soon as I started getting more involved in some of the smaller panels, I started getting more anxious to start working on a larger scale with the line work because I hadn't done that yet. So this painting, Axis A6, came out of that, where the idea was to expand out the field a lot more than I have in the smaller panels, and then just this idea of the illusionistic space, but then still having the organic, the architectural, all these line work, very active surface, and that's something that really excited me about the possibilities of this painting. But then the grid, again, it was becoming a focus for me in terms of how I was dealing with this exhibition, and that led me into the desire to make a more ambitious kind of grid painting that was going to somehow liberate itself out from other illusionistic kind of possibilities, but still have those kind of things going on within the work. So Axis A5 came out of that. It's a 6-foot by 8-foot canvas that the grid was allowed to kind of come out. It was allowed to be more of the feature player of the work as opposed to being a recessed kind of layer. And so what I did is that I kind of played around with the idea of all these layers and layers and layers and then lines weaving in and out of the structure. So it feels very similar to some of the other work, but in many ways I think it gives an indication of some things that I'm interested in the future.